Thank you so much, Senator Kaine, for joining me in this conversation. I look forward to everything we have to talk about. And given the topic of horizons for JFF, I would love to hear from your perspective. What are you hearing from your constituents in Virginia as the economy reopens? What are their concerns? What are the major things on their mind?
Well, and thank you, Ann. Jobs for the Future, great organization. Good to talk with you about this very timely material. And for those of you who don't know Ann, she is the president of Northern Virginia Community College, which is, what is it, the second or third largest community college in the United States?
It's definitely one of the largest, and we're certainly the largest educational institution in the state of Virginia.
Indeed, we're very, very proud of Ann and NVCC. So what am I hearing? So look, the last year has been devastating to people in their health and then in their just psychology, how they feel. And it's been devastating economically for so many. So that's tough. But there is a real palpable sense of we think it's getting better. Vaccinations rolling out, investments that we're making, first through the CARES Act, American Rescue Plan, discussions about infrastructure bill. So I do feel like there's kind of a palpable sense of uplift, but that doesn't mean that everything is rosy. So I'm hearing from employers, some employers, it's hard to get people back to work. And there's a series of reasons for that. There's no single reason. I think that's a little bit of a temporary thing that will clear through. But I'm also hearing from workers that, after this last year, maybe they'd rather work in something that had some more telework options, or maybe it was a good time the last year to kind of reassess, where am I in my career? What new skills should I get? I'm sure you're seeing that at Northern Virginia Community College. So it is a time where people are looking for opportunities to get new skills or different skills, or even change careers completely. And so that can lead to some churn, some challenges, some transition in the American workforce. But again, that's not all bad. It can be, for some folks might decide to move in a different direction in their careers in really positive ways, but they'll need training that's high quality in order to get there.
Yeah, and definitely Virginia has long been a leader in workforce development innovation. And so can you talk a little bit about things that are happening here in the Commonwealth, or even that you're proposing at the federal level, that really would help connect more individuals, perhaps post-pandemic, to the skill sets you're describing that really lead to that career transformation and that advancement?
And there's a lot that happens well in Virginia. As I talk to employers, Virginia is seen as a state with a really strong economy. And reason number one is people think we have a good workforce. So we have a K-12 system that is strong, particularly relative to other states. We've got a higher ed system, community college, four-year public-private, that is seen as strong. We have been a magnet for talent. So we attract talent from other places, and then that kind of builds on itself. So a lot is going well for us on the workforce side. A couple of things that maybe we've particularly done well recently. I want to give Governor McAuliffe and Governor Northam credit for the Fast Forward program in realizing some things about our community college system. Community colleges began where they were really associate degree granting institutions. And so the state funding model for community colleges in Virginia tended to be based on the students who are getting associate degrees. Well, more and more recently, our students who go to Northern Virginia Community College and others, they may come less for a degree than the acquisition of a skill or a credential, not in the traditional 15-week-long college semester. It might be a highly intense 8-week, 40 hours a week training program. But at the Virginia state level, we weren't compensating our community colleges for those courses. They were getting compensated based on associate degree acquisition. So once Governor McAuliffe first and then Governor Northam kind of as an implementer realized, well, wait a minute, the community college student of today is a little bit different than might have been the case, and we ought to be investing in the community colleges as they are than the community colleges they used to be. The Fast Forward initiative has made investments in high quality training programs on our community college campuses, even those that are shorter than the traditional college semester. And I think that's been enormously positive. And the data that I've seen about Fast Forward, from the Virginia Community College and from the State Higher Ed Council, SHEV, suggest this is a model that really works. It has been the basis for some of my work in the Health, Education, Labor, Pension Committee to ask the question, hey, if a family is income qualified for a Pell Grant, why can their oldest child who wants to go to college use the Pell Grant, but child number 2 who wants to get high quality career and technical not use the Pell Grant? And so I've worked very hard with Rob Portman of Ohio to enable short-term Pell for high quality, shorter term career and technical education. And Ann, as you know, this is very much in accord with what we've done with Pell. We allow Pell Grants to be used for part-time students. We just earlier this year restarted the program to allow Pell Grants to be used by incarcerated individuals who are in college courses, because we want them to be able to finish their incarceration and then be productive and be able to be hired and do good things. And so if we've been flexible with Pell in these ways, we should be flexible with Pell to allow Pell to be used for high quality short-term job training. So the Jobs Act, which we're working on very much now as part of this larger American competitiveness package, is something that really builds off programs like Virginia Fast Forward.
Absolutely. And I know that independent research in the state has shown that fast forward programs are going to lead to average wage gains for individuals between 19 and 24%. And when you think that you're talking about a program that's only going to last 4 months or less, that's life-changing. I mean, it goes beyond significant. You're moving people from one pay bracket to another. You're moving them into positions where they might get insurance for the first time. You're really changing lives. And I think one of the challenges we see in Virginia to the question about short-term Pell is the amount of money that's available to support students with the financial aid to pay for that third of the cost that's required as part of Fast Forward.
Right.
Short-term Pell would be incredibly impactful for so many folks across Virginia and across the country.
Well, and as president of Northern Virginia Community College, why don't you talk about how you utilize, for example, Fast Forward? We talked about it as a state program, but how do you utilize that at Northern Virginia Community College to provide really high quality short-term training to your students?
Well, and I think to your point about making a difference, that these are certificates that are high quality and demand driven. So one of the things at Northern Virginia Community College that we do is really look out at industry demand across our region, because you're talking about individuals who don't want to have to pick up and move across the country to find a job doing what they were just educated in. So
Right.
all of these demand driven certificates lead directly to employment in our region in high demand pathways where this might be somebody's first job in IT, in healthcare, but it's not going to be their last job. This really sets a whole stage for individuals to move from something like medical assisting to CNA to being
Right.
an LPN. You can start in learning something about cloud computing and then move on and maybe eventually go work at Amazon HQ2. So I think that's what we're really excited about, is the opportunity to connect people to those new futures, those brighter futures.
One of the things that I love when I visit Northern Virginia Community College, you have multiple campuses, is, I go to the campus down in the Springfield area, and it is very focused on medical careers, all kinds of different medical careers. And as you point out, there may be students who are, just out of high school or starting on what might be an entry-level medical career job, but they can grow and change and get different specialties and credentials along the way. Or I've been to meetings on different campuses within your college to talk to students who are not only in cyber fields, but even convening meetings of other institutions of learning in Northern Virginia and employers, because the demand for cyber specialists is so intense now nationwide, but especially here. And I see, again, you've got the 18-year-old and you have the 25-year-old and then you have the 45-year-old, and they're at different points in their professional life, but they're able to get new skills and keep growing, good for their family, and something like cybersecurity or healthcare, really good for the community.
Absolutely. And when we look at what Nova is able to do, we're really focused on that equity and opportunity, right? We talk about the 5 E's at Nova, and one of them is equity, but it's also excellence and empathy and evidence of economic and social mobility. So, thank you so much for your passion around the work that we do at Nova and at community colleges across the country. Can you talk with me a little bit about why you're so interested in community colleges?
Yeah, great question. My interest in this field really came out of growing up in my dad's ironworking and welding shop, and working in his shop, and yet going to a high school where career and technical education was really downgraded. So kind of part of my life was appreciating the value of career and technical education, and part of my life, career and technical education was sort of treated very much second class. I ran a career and technical school in Honduras for a year in 1980 and 81. Again, it made it very important to me. But by the time I had gotten to be mayor of Richmond and then into lieutenant governor and governor, what I saw in Virginia is probably our best providers of career and technical education were our community colleges. There are other programs, the apprenticeship shipbuilding school at Newport News Shipyard, and there's other great career and technical programs, but mostly if a student was getting high quality career and tech, it was at a community college. But it was sadly kind of late in my time as governor before I realized, but wait a minute, we're not compensating our community colleges for this. We're compensating them for degree acquisition only, but credentials and skills are so important, sometimes every bit as important as a degree. And the schools and the students are having to pay full freight on that because they're not getting really state support for it. So I have been very interested in reducing that inequity. I also really liked about our community colleges when I was mayor and governor, something that you've already alluded to. Community colleges tend to be really nimble in reading the job market in their region and saying, okay, we got to partner with some employers to create certain kinds of skills. If we were trying to dictate top down from Richmond what everybody would do, we wouldn't be that successful. But instead, we have local community colleges with their own boards and with their own talented leaders, and they tend to really adjust to their own region. So if we go out to Dabney Lancaster Community College out in Western Virginia, they're going to be offering programs very tailored to that economy that'll be different than yours. I like that flexibility and the partnership with private employers and other employers to try to really tailor the educational experience to the needs that exist in the community right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we really do see is that connection to community is so powerful. Northern Virginia is home to the world's data center operations. And so
Right.
we have strong data center operations programs, but that wouldn't be important in another part of the state.
Right.
But there's another part of community too that I would love for you to talk a little bit about. And it's, how do we look at the whole student? Because we know coming out of the pandemic, folks are really facing a lot of challenges, whether it's challenges with affordable housing or childcare or even access to food. And how do we help people really find that next step forward, looking at the whole student who might come to our institutions?
No, that's a really good question, Ann, and I'll answer a little, and then I'm going to throw it back at you. Maybe you can share what Nova does, because you deal with younger students, older students, students who are working, students who are veterans, students who some may be active duty now and they're taking additional courses. So you have a very diverse student population. But I think one thing we can say about the entire student population is the last year has been really hard. You had to switch your course content from in-person to online. That can be isolating.
Yeah.
Mental health needs, we're seeing them across society. A lot of the students who go to Nova already have significant stressors in their lives. They're working in a couple of jobs and then trying to get education at the same time. So the additional stresses of worrying about health, worrying about family health, maybe knowing somebody who was sick of COVID or having COVID. That was when President Biden declares that the public health emergency of COVID is over, and I think Governor Northam is making that declaration at the end of June. The two things that will continue are the mental health consequences of this year. And then second, 15 to 20% of people who've had COVID have longer term symptoms, which all of your healthcare students are going to be grappling with. Okay, well, how do we deal with those symptoms in the hospitals and the clinics? So I think we have to really focus on mental health needs of our young people, of the entire population. But that also involves training the mental health workforce. So the nice thing about being on the Health, Education, Labor, Pension Committee is it's health and it's education, but it's also the education of the healthcare workforce. And we're going to have some needs coming out of the pandemic that will have to make us think about, we didn't have enough behavioral health workers before. Now we really don't have enough. So we're going to have to rely on the Northern Virginia community colleges and other community colleges and learning institutions to help us build out a broader network of mental health providers, of folks who are fluent in telework and teletechnologies, to go out and sit down with the patient at a remote location and help them dialogue with a medical office to do a telehealth visit when that is convenient for them, but maybe they're not so fluent in the technology and they can't do it themselves. So I think that the pandemic experience creates challenges, but we've also learned some new techniques that can enable us to broaden our skill set going forward, and community colleges will be at the forefront of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Why don't you share about challenges that your students, just your own kind of granular experience about challenges your own students are experiencing at this time and what NOVA is doing to try to help them?
Well, I think to your point, you're spot on. I mean, we're talking about folks who probably were already at the margins, and the pandemic really pushed them on the other side of that line. And even prior to the pandemic, when we surveyed our students at NOVA around their basic needs, we found that close to 50% of our students were struggling with getting enough food, getting transportation, getting housing and childcare. About 11% of our students reported being homeless. This is a very expensive part of the country to live in, and it really showed in what our students were struggling with. So we really stood up and said we needed to do much more. And so we, on every campus and then virtually when we were remote, stood up financial stability and student advocacy centers to connect our students to the services that they needed within our communities, right? Really living that community that's part of our name, whether it's mental health services or childcare, transportation, or food. And we'll continue to do that post-pandemic. We actually, and I should thank you for the stimulus dollars, we've dedicated even more than we were asked to of our stimulus dollars to emergency aid and direct aid to our students, because we know that's where it needs to go. So thank you for that.
Well, Northern Virginia Community College is in the part of Virginia that people might think it's the wealthiest, or might think it's got the best broadband connection anywhere in the state, but Northern Virginia Community College was using some of their stimulus dollars to have more vigorous Wi-Fi in parking lots and things like that, so that students could come if they didn't have good, reliable access or a device that they could afford in their house. They could come to the college and do their coursework in the parking lot. And this is in wealthy Northern Virginia, but you were trying to figure out where are your students and meet them where they were, rather than expect them to necessarily always be able to come to where you were.
Yeah, we talk a lot about being student ready, right? Not asking students to be college ready, but to be ready for the students that we serve. And I'll just wrap it up with one last question, right? Where do you see hope for bipartisan agreement on education and workforce policy on Capitol Hill? Because we would love to hear that there is hope there.
Well, I would say, we're working on an infrastructure bill right now. That's the next big priority. And I think everyone, Democrat and Republican, mayors, governors, Chamber of Commerce, organized labor, they all know we need to do infrastructure. And everyone also realizes if we do it, it's not like the people have all the skills they need to actually do the projects. We got to have a workforce that can make these historic investments. So while there's some differences between the parties on how big should an infrastructure bill be, how do we pay for it, how do we allocate among project types or among states, I do think it's bipartisan that we have to have a workforce that's ready to do infrastructure and more. And so something like the Jobs Act that we were talking earlier, short-term Pell for high quality career and technical education. I have 35 co-sponsors for that bill, equally divided between Democratic and Republican. If you saw the sponsors, you'd see people who are on no other bill together other than Jobs Act. We have a bill called the Access Grants, which really focuses on community college innovative partnerships with private sector to train people in high need, in-demand job areas, very bipartisan. Another bill called the Builds Act, which is really focused on the infrastructure workforce, very bipartisan. So I think the area that, we're talking about with Jobs for the Future today is one of the areas that is most bipartisan. I would say, high quality career and technical education, workforce training. The only other area that I see up here that I think has kind of similar bipartisan cred is stuff that we do with veterans and military families. I never have to worry about whether somebody's a Democrat or Republican if I'm working on a military family or veterans issues. And I see these workforce issues quickly becoming like that. They're not divisive. They're unifying. And that's not only good for our students and institutions. The nation needs a few more issues like that today. And I'm glad that there is some unified consensus around the importance of the work that you're doing, that we're trying to do in the Senate.
So thank you so much, Senator Kaine, for being such a great advocate for community colleges, but maybe even more importantly, for the students that we serve. You understand them and what they need. So thank you. And thank you for this conversation.
I'm so glad we could do it, and look forward to seeing you on campus.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care.